Hello, Commanders. Cosmoteer's roadmap was updated some time ago, and I'm sure that a lot of you are eagerly awaiting for the upcoming updates. One highly anticipated feature is docking, which is included in the 5th phase, but sadly, that is still a while away. However, what if I told you that there's a way in the game right now for you to combine ships? Somehow, back in December of 2022, this mad lad, known by the username of Coolgamertag, discovered a flaw in the game's collision detection algorithm, which allows for structure and armor to phase through each other, opening a wide range of new possibilities for shipbuilding. Maybe you'd like to place some armor in the exclusion zone of your thrusters where you normally can't build. How about creating an ultralight and compact missile orbiter? Perhaps you're instead looking to show off some cool team synergy and build a giant combiner ship for 2v2 team battles, such as a rail spinner. Or a rail kite with monstrous firepower. Well, you can build all of the above in whatever transformer-like contraption you can think of, thanks to this mechanic called locking. The events leading to his discovery first began with the goal of creating a more compact ion core by splitting the ship and then keeping both pieces together using friction. The structure holding the prisms in place here is firmly wedged against the ion beam emitters, thus allowing the ship to maneuver without separating. Further testing of ways to improve the design were performed until an attempt at adding some kind of lock was made, and by sheer coincidence, all the required conditions were just right for it to work. However, every subsequent change to the craft resulted in the lock failing, so this testing ship was created. Experimentation followed suit with multitudes of changes until the locking procedure was sufficiently refined for consistent use. Coolgamertag then created a guide with all of his findings to share with the community, which I'll leave a link to down in the description. So basically, how does it work? Well, depending on the relative speed between two ships, a check for collision is made before or after each game tick. At or above 21 meters per second, a check is made, and if there's going to be a collision, it happens in the next tick. While just below 21 meters per second, that check isn't made, thus allowing locking to be possible. Some players have reported being able to lock at slower speeds, going as low as 17 meters per second, but it isn't always possible to do so with every ship. So, it's best to stick with getting close to 21 meters per second. We'll go through how to make use of it for a single player ship and how to set up a two-player combiner ship, finishing up with some tips for asymmetrical builds. So you're first going to need a ship with its two modules being a perfect fit. One part will remain stationary, while the other uses some thrusters to reach the necessary speed for locking. Make sure that the latter is as symmetrical as possible, otherwise it will deviate from its course. I recommend using boost thrusters as they do not have any ramp-up time while boosting and will facilitate the setup, but any other thruster will do. You're also going to need to add both halves of the lock like so. All wedge types are suitable as long as they fit within each other, but the 1x1s are preferred for their small size. Additionally, depending on your design, you may need to add several locks to maintain structural integrity. Next, when placing the charges used to separate both pieces before locking, make sure that they are at least 2 blocks away from any non-structure blocks. Otherwise, the shockwave from the detonation may shift the ship's position. Finally, add the charges and the necessary thrusters to a control group by selecting them and then pressing the control key with any number. Save your ship afterwards. Now that we've set everything up, the tricky bit of actually getting the lock to work comes next. Slow down the game to 1/8 speed so you can precisely observe your speedometer, select your control group, detonate the charges, activate your boosters if you're using any, and turn on autofire. In this case, the ship reached 19.4 meters per second, which isn't enough. There are three ways we can make adjustments to tune our speed: a change in distance, mass, or thrust to the moving part. Typically, it's easier to modify the distance, so we'll begin there. As it went slower than 21 meters per second, we'll increase the distance by a block. Once again, don't forget to save your ship and repeat the process. We're getting closer with a speed of 20.4 meters per second, so we'll adjust it by another block. And there you have it. Just remember that the weight and thrust could have been modified to achieve the same result. There's a lot of guesswork, so picking the right adjustment will be up to you. If you're still having difficulties, there are tools to further slow down the game's speed and to provide visual help by launching Cosmoteer in dev mode. Once in game, press Ctrl backtick. From the menu that pops up, select Sim, Debug, and turn on Fixtures. Pink outlines will appear representing the collision boxes of your ship. By pressing the page up and page down keys, you can slow down the game to 1/100th of its speed. Now, to get the lock working, your goal is to make the pink lines come really close to touching during the tick before they merge. For a two-player combiner ship, the process is identical with a few extra steps. A consistent setup is key for locking to work, so we need a way of aligning both ships perfectly every time. We'll be using a simple structure aligner that I came up with. Place two 1x3 structure wedges on either side of the stationary ship as shown here. For the other, add them in this manner. When attempting to lock, make sure to cancel orders on the stationary ship, otherwise, if it is equipped with thrusters, it'll mess things up. Next, pilot the locking vessel to slide the wedges into each other. There can't be any space left in between them. Wait until your speed reaches 0, and follow the same process we've been using from here on out. Another method of combining is to take advantage of how the game spawns in ships for multiplayer. It was first discovered by a player called Nick. The two ships will always appear with the same exact distance in between them. Just specify their flight direction before saving the vessels so that they're facing the right way when spawned in. Then change it back once the game begins. Afterwards, it's just a question of auto-firing the thrusters and letting it take care of itself. However, this method is harder to use as you won't be able to make modifications to the distance, and you'll have to jump back and forth between creative and multiplayer while trying to get the lock to work. Coincidentally, this ship here is able to lock at 17.7 meters per second. As mentioned earlier, locking at a slower speed is sometimes possible, but achieving such a setup most often comes down to sheer luck, as it was the case here. So far, we've only covered how to lock with asymmetrical design, but it's possible to do so with an asymmetrical one, albeit a lot harder because Cosmoteer has no indication markers for the center of mass, nor a thrust vector, both of which need to be aligned for the ship to fly straight, implying a lot more guesswork to get the locking set up right. You'll have to place your thrusters and change their positions depending on which side the ship is tilting towards to. Do not auto-fire your thrusters. Instead, take direct control of your ship and apply forward thrust. The game will attempt to adjust the thrust accordingly in order to maintain a straight trajectory, giving you a certain margin of error in case both center of mass and thrust vector aren't perfectly aligned. Thankfully, there's now an alternative to just eyeballing the entire setup. LunastroD, an active member of our PvP community, has been developing a tool to represent both the center of mass and thrust vector of a ship. You can get it from her GitHub page, which I'll leave a link to down below in the description, or you can make use of her bot, which will soon make its first appearance on both the Excelsior and Battleship Brawlers discords. And that just about covers everything. On a final note, what's great about locking is that you don't need to worry about repercussions for using it, or wonder if it will be removed. When informed about it, the game creator, Walt, was actually glad that the players discovered a way to combine ships in the meantime until he eventually adds docking in the game. He even expressed that he has no intention in patching it, which means that only a future update to the collision detection algorithm could inadvertently break this mechanic. So, go nuts with it, and I hope to see some of your crazy creations.